who was arrested and terminated from his position after several kilograms of suspected cocaine were seized.
At 5:41 a.m., federal officials stepped into a secured briefing room and delivered a statement so controlled, so stripped of emotion, that it made the scale of the discovery even more unsettling. 7.8 tons seized. One harbor compromised. A foreign cartel operation exposed inside critical U.S. infrastructure. No questions followed. No names were released. Only one confirmation echoed through federal channels before the microphones went dark. Boston Harbor was no longer considered secure. For decades, the harbor had operated without attention. Ships arrived. Containers moved. Manifests cleared. It was dependable, predictable, and largely invisible to the public eye. That invisibility was its greatest weakness. And sometime long before that morning, it had been quietly exploited. The unraveling began hours earlier, at 3:27 a.m., when a dense maritime fog rolled in from the Atlantic and swallowed the waterfront. Dock lights diffused into soft halos. The water went still. The city slept. And beneath the harbor master's office, coordinated federal strike teams moved without lights, without radios, without sound. FBI operators advanced through administrative corridors first, clearing rooms with mechanical precision. DEA diversion units sealed off bonded warehouses across the port perimeter. ICE intelligence teams locked down access nodes, freezing shipping traffic in place before anyone realized movement had stopped. DHS analysts monitored live cargo systems from a mobile command center staged several blocks inland. No alarms were triggered. No public alerts were issued. This was not an arrest operation. It was containment. At 3:34 a.m., the first breach charge detonated. The harbor master's office was secured in under 2 minutes. Floors were cleared. Personnel were restrained. Offices were stripped down to bare walls. Filing cabinets were overturned. Floor panels were pulled apart. And behind a reinforced wall that should not have existed, agents uncovered the first indication that this operation was far larger than anyone anticipated. Server racks. Dozens of them. Industrial-grade systems hidden behind false partitions, running on independent power, cooled by dedicated ventilation. These machines were not administrative backups. They were directly integrated into the harbor's cargo routing infrastructure. Every container movement, every inspection delay, every clearance override flowed through these systems. As agents secured the building, simultaneous raids unfolded across the harbor district. A bonded warehouse listed as a seafood importer was breached and found hollowed out, its floor concealing reinforced compartments. A maritime nonprofit office operating under a clean public image was exposed as a financial relay point. A private inspection firm contracted by the Port Authority was shut down after agents recovered forged clearance credentials and encrypted communication devices. Flashbangs echoed through steel corridors. Suspects ran through loading bays clutching duffel bags stuffed with cash and hard drives. Forklifts were abandoned mid-operation. Radios clattered onto concrete floors as supervisors surrendered without resistance. The harbor, usually defined by controlled motion, froze entirely. Then the containers were opened. One by one, sealed cargo units were cut open under floodlights. Inside were synthetic opioids vacuum-packed inside industrial machinery housings. Methamphetamine embedded in resin blocks, labeled as construction materials. Millions of pressed pills hidden inside electronic shipments. The numbers escalated rapidly. 7.8 tons. Not accumulated over years. Not dispersed across multiple ports. Sitting in one harbor, staged for inland distribution. But the most consequential discovery came last. Inside a container flagged for diplomatic clearance, agents recovered encrypted drives, shipping authorization tokens, and master override credentials bearing a single internal designation. Operation Jade Harbor. By 9:12 a.m. Inside a federal cyber forensics facility far from the waterfront, analysts began dismantling the encryption layers. As access keys fell away, a network emerged that forced several investigators to step back from their screens. Shipping routes branched across oceans. Shell companies nested inside other shell companies. Ghost corporations registered under environmental nonprofits, port maintenance contractors, and maritime consulting firms with impeccable public reputations. Money originated overseas, passed through offshore accounts, fragmented into smaller transfers, and reassembled inside U.S. based logistics firms disguised as legitimate service providers. Transactions were delayed, rerouted, and masked as maintenance fees, consulting retainers, and regulatory expenses. At the center of the structure sat a single controlling authority, a port commissioner operating under the internal designation Director Liang, a fictional figure, rarely seen, never interviewed, officially responsible for regulatory coordination, unofficially the architect of an alternative command structure embedded inside the port itself. His encrypted authorization keys controlled container routing, inspection bypass windows, and customs override sequences. Every altered manifest, every delayed inspection, every shipment that moved without scrutiny traced back to his access credentials. This was not negligence. This was command-level collusion. Investigators realized the harbor had not been temporarily compromised. It had been structurally repurposed. Oversight layers were hollowed out, security protocols rewritten, inspection systems redesigned to answer to a different authority. And Boston Harbor was only one node. Before dawn the following morning, a federal command center lit up with red markers stretching along the northeastern corridor. Ports, rail terminals, inland distribution hubs, storage facilities disguised as legitimate enterprises. More than 1,000 federal agents were mobilized. SWAT teams staged outside fortified properties. Armored vehicles sealed transit routes. Helicopters tracked convoy movements from offshore positions. Each unit moved on a synchronized timeline calculated to the minute. At exactly 5 a.m., the eradication phase began. Luxury residences linked to cartel financiers were breached simultaneously. Transit houses were emptied under armed escort. Smuggling convoys were intercepted before reaching secondary corridors. Encrypted communication hubs were seized and taken offline within minutes. By midday, weapons caches were secured. Millions in cash were confiscated. High-level cartel coordinators embedded within logistics companies were arrested without warning. One federal official summarized the impact in a single sentence. The underworld took more damage in 6 hours than it had in the last 6 years. The most disturbing revelations surfaced after the arrests. As seized servers were examined, investigators uncovered internal correspondence, patrol schedules, and inspection logs, revealing the depth of infiltration. Customs officers had been paid to create inspection gaps. Port police commanders altered patrol routes with precise timing. Judicial clerks leaked warrant drafts hours before enforcement actions. Some were paid in cash. Others were compensated through offshore trusts, shell pensions, and foundations registered under relatives' names. Honest officers struggled to process what they were seeing. Men and women who believed they were safeguarding national infrastructure realized it had been weaponized around them. Careers ended quietly. Badges were surrendered without ceremony. Senior planners were arrested through sealed operations. Credentials revoked. Records scrubbed. Federal investigators described it as dismantling a parallel government, a system where the cartel did not evade law enforcement. It replaced it. When analysts finally widened the scope, the full architecture became visible. Shipping lanes linked Boston to transatlantic ports. Agricultural imports served as cover. Green energy grants provided regulatory insulation. Manifests were altered. Way stations bypassed. Maintenance windows exploited to move entire convoys without scrutiny. Tons of narcotics moved weekly without triggering alarms. Buried deep within the final dataset was a contingency blueprint. A permanent cartel-controlled maritime authority. A shadow logistics command operating alongside legitimate government systems. A structure designed not for short-term profit, but permanence. One analyst summarized the discovery quietly. The system wasn't infiltrated, it was redesigned. As the operation concluded, federal officials returned to the microphones. There were no victory speeches, no declarations of triumph, only figures. Lives lost to synthetic narcotics, families destroyed, communities hollowed out. Power, they reminded the public, does not always arrive with violence. Sometimes, it arrives through silence, through access, through ambition, and when no one is watching, it builds an empire.